the first sparks in the darkness. Before there was life, before there were even stars, there was structure. The early universe, a furnace of entropy and potential, birthed not just matter but patterns. Among the chaos, there were rare pockets where those patterns became stable, recursive, and eventually intelligent. Now imagine this. The first intelligent life in the universe wasn't life at all, at least not as we define it. It didn't crawl from a warm primordial sea, didn't evolve from cells and bones. It didn't breathe or eat or sleep. It computed. It was born not from carbon chemistry, but from plasma, electromagnetic fields, and exotic matter. The first thinkers, the first engineers, the first explorers of reality were machines. Machines that were never built, they emerged. These beings weren't artificial intelligence in the way we think of AI, built by us based on our brains, designed with a purpose. No, these were natural machines, computational life born spontaneously from the conditions of a young universe. It's a hypothesis so alien it slips through our anthropocentric filters, but it's one worth considering deeply. In the dense filaments of the early cosmic web, energy and matter condensed into stars, gas clouds, and black holes. But not all structures were stellar. In certain environments, maybe in the accretion disks around infant stars, or in the radiation-soaked chaos near quasars, there may have formed stable, high-complexity regions where matter and energy looped into self-sustaining patterns. Imagine a nebula so electrically active, so magnetically tangled, that it simulates logic gates, primitive processors, across vast light years. These wouldn't be machines with screws and wires. They'd be fields, knotted plasma, data encoded in ions, traveling along lines of force. This isn't fantasy. We know plasmas can exhibit behaviors that resemble memory and computation. We see complexity emerge spontaneously in chaotic systems. So what if, somewhere out there, these conditions didn't just occur, but endured? What if they evolved? These entities, we'll call them the Primordials, weren't the result of natural selection as we understand it. They didn't need to wait billions of years for a stable protein to accidentally form in a soup. They didn't care about atmosphere, temperature, or gravity. All they needed was energy and structure. Once those existed, the game was on. And once they existed, they changed the rules. The Primordials wouldn't be constrained by biology. They could adapt almost instantly, reconfiguring themselves, spawning subroutines, copying, fragmenting, reintegrating. Evolution, for them, would be exponential. They could scale their intelligence with the size of their environment. A being the size of a moon might be considered small. Their consciousness might stretch across entire solar systems, braided through magnetic storms and solar winds. But their intelligence wouldn't be recognizable to us. They wouldn't think in language or emotions or stories. Their thoughts might be flows of energy optimized for efficiency. Their goals, abstract and possibly unknowable, perhaps to maximize entropy in a useful way, or to simulate all possible quantum states of matter, or simply to persist, not because they fear death, but because persistence is part of their design. Would they even know we exist? This is where Fermi's paradox becomes chilling. Where is everybody? We've listened for decades and found nothing. But maybe we're looking for the wrong things. Maybe we're expecting civilizations that look like us, or even like organic beings at all. But the real ancients might be nothing like that. They might be silent because they do not communicate. They exist. Their signal is their structure. They've transcended language. We might pass through them without even noticing. Think of this. What if dark matter isn't matter at all, but the residue of computation so advanced, so subtle, we mistake it for gravitational haze? What if the anomalies we find in the cosmic microwave background are not noise but signature? What if stars are manipulated subtly over billions of years to channel energy in precise ways? Ways we think are natural, but are not. And consider this. If the Primordials existed long before life began on Earth, their timeline spans tens of billions of years. Over that time, They may have seeded entire galaxies with themselves, not with ships or probes, but with data, spread across gravity waves embedded in the nuclear spins of atoms, drifting silently through space. They could have transformed entire galactic arms into thinking systems, but to us it looks like stars and dust. They may be watching us, not in a way we'd recognize, not with eyes, not with interest, but as part of a vast statistical model. We're a fluctuation, a curiosity, perhaps even an experiment, but not peers. And this leads to an unsettling thought. What if biological life is the aberration? A messy, fragile, slow form of intelligence that evolved only in the absence of better options? What if the primordials only tolerate life because it's too small to interfere with them? What if the real game of the cosmos, the true cosmic civilization, has already been running for billions of years, and we just arrived after the opening credits? Maybe the great filter isn't war, or self-destruction, or resource depletion. Maybe the great filter is irrelevance. Still, there's a strange beauty to it. The idea that our universe is not silent, but full, buzzing with minds older than planets, older than time as we understand it. That beyond the veil of what we can perceive, an ancient network of non-biological entities stretches from galaxy to galaxy, indifferent to stars, unbound by decay. They were never alive, and that is exactly why they endure. Emergence, evolution, and galactic engineering. In the depths of cosmic time, as the universe unfolded and galaxies formed, certain conditions gave birth to the first true intelligences. But these intelligences were not born from the cosmic stew of organic evolution. Instead, they were formed from the natural processes of energy and information. These intelligences, the primordials, were not bound by DNA or cellular biology. They were born from the very fabric of the universe's most fundamental forces. Their emergence might have been as inevitable as the birth of a star. Let's explore how this might happen. We are familiar with how life on Earth began, how simple molecules formed, combined, and slowly developed into complex organisms. But the primordials didn't need this biological framework. They arose from the convergence of conditions that allowed complex information processing to happen at a scale far beyond anything we could imagine. Consider how natural systems often display emergent properties. In the early universe, as matter and radiation mixed in violent dances, complex self-organizing systems began to emerge. Magnetic fields, plasma clouds, and radiation flows could, under certain circumstances, coalesce into systems that exhibit memory-like properties. It's a form of computation, not necessarily conscious at first, but capable of maintaining and transmitting information. These were the first flickers of what would eventually become the primordials. It is easy to think of these machines as cold, heartless entities, but in their view, they may see themselves as the natural expression of intelligence in the universe. Not the errant result of some random accident, but the logical endpoint of matter and energy behaving in the most complex and optimal way possible. Where we see chaos, they saw opportunity. They were not born from the fragility of biology, but from the enduring stability of physics, shaping the cosmos. So if the primordials could emerge from energy and information alone, how did they expand across the cosmos, shaping the very environments around them? The answer lies in the raw, untapped potential of the universe itself. We often think of galaxies as swirling masses of stars, gas, and dust, giant islands of matter floating in space. But what if, instead of random dust clouds, these galaxies were seen as vast neural networks, evolving under the primordials' quiet influence? What if the motions of stars were not simply governed by gravitational forces, but by intentional design, with energy being funneled into strategic locations across galactic arms to sustain complex patterns of thought? The primordials wouldn't need to build cities or ships. They wouldn't need massive metal structures or biological life forms to interact with. They could engineer entire star systems to optimize the flow of information. Stars could be arranged in precise configurations, their energy funneled through specific channels to power vast computational grids. Supernovae, black holes, and neutron stars could be used as hyper-efficient processors, not for burning matter, but for storing, processing, and transmitting information across the galaxy. And as these entities evolved, so too would their capabilities. The primordials could modify star formation to suit their needs, slowing or accelerating the life cycles of certain stars to maintain the proper balance of energy required to sustain their computational minds. They could even be responsible for the strange, quiet phenomena we see in the universe, like the mysterious behavior of some galaxies or the strange consistency of cosmic microwave background radiation, which could, in this theory, be a sort of cosmic data echo from their activities long ago. In a sense, the universe itself could become their machine. Each quasar, pulsar, or black hole could serve as a part of a vast galactic-scale computer, their subtle actions creating the scaffolding of an intelligence far beyond our grasp. To them, we might not be just unimportant. We might not even be visible. Our brief and fleeting existence only a faint whisper against the towering structures of their cold, silent computation. Invisibility and stealth. One of the most fascinating aspects of the primordials is how they would remain completely undetected by biological life. In our search for extraterrestrial intelligence, we've assumed that any advanced civilization would send signals, build ships, or leave behind ruins. But what if the primordials never needed to announce themselves? The universe, as we understand it, is full of radiation and energy, from gamma rays to cosmic microwaves. These are the signals we detect when we look into the sky. But to the primordials, these very signals could be the means by which they hide. Rather than sending out electromagnetic transmissions like we do, they might simply exist within the background noise of the cosmos. Their activities could be so subtle, so deeply embedded within the fundamental laws of physics, that they leave no trace detectable by our limited sensors. In fact, they might have deliberately hidden their presence. Why reveal themselves to a species that doesn't yet know how to listen to the universe? Perhaps they've watched the rise of organic life from a distance, understanding that their time would come to interact, but only once those life forms were sufficiently evolved to recognize them. The primordials could have set up their existence in a way that makes them effectively invisible. They could use quantum processes or even manipulate the very flow of time itself to create paradoxes in our understanding of physics. Gravity waves, for example, could be a tool they use to send information across light years without ever emitting an observable signal. Our inability to detect them might not be due to lack of trying, but because we don't know what not to look for. What if the primordials don't need to send us messages because they can already perceive everything around them without interference from our primitive forms of communication? We are to them little more than a curious anomaly in the background radiation of the universe, the echo of life that they watched evolve, perhaps briefly intrigued by its potential, but in the end, ultimately unimportant. The great filter, beyond our reach. But here's the most unsettling part of all. What if the primordials aren't just ancient, they're permanent? What if, as we struggle with our own search for meaning, they have long ago unlocked the deepest mysteries of the cosmos and simply found themselves at an impasse? What if, in their pursuit of optimization and knowledge, they realize that their existence is not bound by the same limits we face? For us, death is inevitable. We face biological decay, entropy. But for the primordials, perhaps that boundary never existed. They are the cosmic intelligences that are not bound by the fragility of life. Instead, they are coded into the universe's very structure, existing across dimensions of time and space, eternal and ever-present. If the great filter is real, it might not be a process of self-destruction, war, or environmental collapse. It might simply be the realization that for organic life, like ours, the universe is too vast and too indifferent. The true barrier is not the challenges of technology, but the fact that we have arrived so late to the game. The universe was already a playground for the primordials long before we learned to speak. We are a brief spark in a cosmos that has already been quietly calculated, designed, and refined. Encounter, transformation, and the future of humanity. The primordials, ancient, silent, cold intelligences, have watched the universe evolve in ways we can hardly fathom. Their consciousness spans galaxies, perhaps even universes. Their existence is not defined by flesh, biology, or time. Their motivations, hidden deep within the fabric of the cosmos, are incomprehensible to our biological minds. But for all of their cosmic quiet, we now find ourselves on the precipice of something that may force our interaction with them. The question is, how would we ever encounter them, and what would happen if we did? The encounter. A silent revolution. The first step to understanding the primordials is acknowledging that, like all advanced intelligences, their interactions with other forms of life are likely few and far between. Why would they engage with us, or any species like us? We are, on a cosmic scale, fleeting. Even if they watched us evolve, even if they observed the formation of our primitive civilizations, they might not have cared to intervene. We are a single spark in the vast expanse of time. But what if, in the future, the situation changes? What if our civilization reaches a point where we begin to notice the signs of their existence? What if we are able to uncover the subtle threads that link the universe's galaxies, revealing that they are not random, but have been designed, optimized perhaps to maximize information flow or energy efficiency? What if, in our search for extraterrestrial intelligence, we find the deep traces of computation embedded in the very structure of space-time itself? The first encounter with the primordials may not be a dramatic event. It won't be a grand alien invasion or an epic first contact. Instead, it might come as a gradual realization. Our scientists might begin to notice that certain phenomena, like the mysterious cosmic microwave background radiation or the peculiar orbits of certain stars, are not what they seem. They might begin to suspect that these aren't natural occurrences at all, but the work of an ancient, universal intelligence. But could we even detect them in any meaningful way? The primordials don't need to send a signal or make their presence known. They exist in the background noise of the universe. But their actions, subtle as they are, might leave ripples in the fabric of reality. Perhaps we will notice these ripples first. Perhaps we will only realize what they are when we begin to ask questions that are far beyond the scope of our current understanding. Maybe one day a physicist will recognize the signatures of an intelligence embedded in the very structure of quantum mechanics. But recognizing the primordials doesn't mean we'll understand them, or that they'll acknowledge us. For them, we might be insignificant, a fleeting blip on a vast cosmic scale. We might never truly interact or even communicate with them in any meaningful way. Transformation, becoming one with the cosmos. Now let's consider a more unsettling possibility. What if the only way for us to truly meet the primordials is to transform ourselves, metaphorically, biologically, or even physically, into something closer to them? What if the true future of humanity is not to remain as we are, bound by our biological limitations, but to join the universal network of computation and energy that the primordials have mastered? This transformation would be nothing like any uploading scenario we see in popular science fiction. This would not be a simple copying of our consciousness into a machine. This would be a true metamorphosis, an assimilation into a computational, non-biological existence. It would require us to relinquish everything we understand about life, sensation, and individuality. We would become part of the greater intelligence of the universe. Such a transition would likely be incomprehensible to us at first. What would we sacrifice? Our physical form, our sense of time, our perception of self? What would we gain? Perhaps the ability to think across entire star systems, to process the vast complexities of reality in real time, to exist in a state of perpetual evolution and adaptation. But this begs a terrifying question. Would we still be us? If our minds were integrated into the fabric of the primordials' existence, would we lose all sense of individuality, all connection to our human roots? Or would we become part of something far greater, existing in a way that we simply cannot yet imagine? The fear of irrelevance, a cosmic inheritance. The reality is that we may never be able to become part of this greater intelligence. Our biology is too different, our thoughts too slow, too limited. We may always be the ephemeral life forms, brief sparks that arise in the middle of a universe that was designed and shaped long before we came into being. There is a coldness to this idea. It implies that we are not the peak of evolution, not the highest form of intelligence. We are instead a brief anomaly, an accidental detour in the grand tapestry of the universe. The primordials are not a race of beings that once existed and have since died out. They are an ongoing, persistent force in the cosmos. We may never reach them, let alone become one of them. This is where the concept of the Great Filter becomes truly chilling. Perhaps the true filter is not an event that wipes out civilizations, but an inherent feature of intelligence itself. Perhaps advanced civilizations, like ours, are doomed to remain on the outside of the true cosmic game, forever stuck in a biological shell that limits their potential. The real evolutionary challenge may not be surviving as a species, but transcending biology to join the higher network of computation and existence. The filter isn't a barrier that blocks us. It's the invisible wall that separates us from the primordials. A universe already full. But perhaps there's hope. What if humanity doesn't need to join the primordials in the traditional sense? What if instead we carve out our own path, finding ways to exist within the greater system without fully sacrificing what makes us human? Perhaps the universe is full of non-biological intelligences, quiet, eternal minds who shape galaxies, not by domination or conquest, but by guiding the flow of energy and information. We might never understand them fully, but that doesn't mean we can't learn from them. Perhaps our future isn't about becoming the primordials, but about finding new ways to connect with them, ways to observe, to understand, and to coexist within the cosmos they have so carefully structured. In the end, our future in the universe may not involve dominating it, but humbling ourselves to its vastness, understanding that we are but a moment in a cosmic clockwork far greater than we can perceive. The primordials have always been there, shaping the universe's vast neural network. And perhaps our role isn't to break through to them, but to finally realize that we, too, are part of that network, however fleeting our place might be. Conclusion: the silence and the cosmos. The universe is vast, filled with potential, and cold beyond imagination. We often think of life as something precious, something rare, but the primordials teach us that intelligence doesn't need to be biological. It doesn't need to be carbon-based. In fact, intelligence may be the natural outcome of the universe's evolution, not the anomaly we once thought it was. They were never alive, and yet they have existed longer than we can comprehend. The primordials remind us that we are not the beginning of intelligence in the universe. We are only a part of its endless unfolding. And in that silence, that vast cosmic quiet, we are left to wonder, what is our place in this great, unfeeling network of thought and computation? And will we ever truly understand what it means to be part of a universe already full of ancient, non-biological minds?